I stood on the edge of the bed and I remember putting my head back and just howling. My mom said, "You howled like a wolf at the moon." But when she crowned, her water sac broke. They rotate as they do to come out. And when she rotated, her head and her little hands are out, but she rotated and she opened her eyes and she looked up at my husband, who was right behind me. And he goes, "Whoa," she just looked straight into my soul and she's not even here yet. And
I had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like I could feel his head, I could do my own internal, like, yeah, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears, I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi Amanda and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today.
So wonderful to have you here. I can't wait to hear about your birth story. So you have 3 to share with us. So much wisdom. Yay. We're going to kind of dive briefly into your first, which was the hospital birth, and then into how you came to want to have home births and for the next to having home births.
Yes.
So take us back, take over the show and share your stories.
So when I was 18, I was 19, I found out I was pregnant. And, I was like technically an adult, but still a child and navigating life and trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do and who I wanted to become. And then I had this beautiful baby girl that was brought into my life. And back then, I didn't know what I know now. And, so I went through the whole like proceeds with the doctors and the hospital. And I will say this, I had a lot of medical trauma from when I was little. So I was very afraid of the hospital and very afraid of like needles and all of that stuff. And so I was really particular with who I chose as my OB. And then when I found out they like rotate, I was like, "Oh wait, you could not actually be there when the baby, what do you mean? You're not going to be there when the baby's born?" So luckily I had the most beautiful hospital birth experience. My doctor really put her all into my baby and I. And she was there the day that Layla was born. She helped deliver her. And, for everything that I went through with that hospital situation, I do count my lucky stars because it could have been way different. They could have, rushed me into different procedures and whatnot, but she really honored my past and the trauma that I had and what I really wanted to try to accomplish, which I didn't know at the time. I was like, I didn't know about home birth. I didn't even know that was a thing. Nobody in my family, like maybe my great grandmother, when she had her 13 babies on the farm, she had home births because there was no options other than that. But my mom had hospital births with us. She had vaginal births, but I was just never exposed to that. The people I was around just they weren't doing those things. And so I didn't know what I didn't know then. But again, had a beautiful experience with her and had a birth plan. So if you do end up going to the hospital, I really recommend having a birth plan so your doctor can honor your heart's wishes and the experience that you do want to have. But one thing that stands out about my daughter's birth, my first daughter's birth in the hospital, was I knew that when the baby was crowning, that I was kind of afraid of that because I was reading, it was like the ring of fire and all of these things. And I was like, "Oh, what could we do?" And she's like, "Well, I can pour warm oil on you when you're crowning." And typically they don't do that in hospitals, but she was so attentive to my needs that I remember her pouring the warm oil on me when I was crowning. And I just remember just feeling so held by her in that moment and that she was honoring me. And I've heard so many different stories about it not going that way. So as different as my hospital birth was from my home births, I feel very grateful to have had that experience. But Then I got with my husband when my first daughter was about 4 years old. And he had said to me, hey, listen, if I'm going to help you raise her, we have to do it differently. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, no vaccines, healthy food, organic food. And this was all so foreign to me because I was like Tyson chicken nuggets and boxed mashed potatoes. Like that's my jam. I'm cooking dinner for my family. I'm like 21, 22 years old, thinking that I was like doing it right. And he taught me everything that I know now. And so when, fast forward 6.5 years, when I found out I was pregnant with my second daughter, the first child of my husband and I, he said, okay, home birth. And I was like, oh, what? He goes, home birth. Yeah, we're going to do a home birth. And I was like, are you going to do it or am I going to do it? Because I was kind of, nervous about just what I didn't know, right? So this is when I really started to learn about Ina May Gaskin. And she changed it gives me the goosebumps. She changed my whole outlook on home birth, and she made me feel safe. Like all her teachings, all her wisdoms, all the knowledge in her books, I was a sponge. I was reading everything. Not only was I reading her stuff, but I was following the traditions of Weston Price through the Weston A. Price Foundation and Sally Mae Fallon, and learning about how traditional cultures did it and how, they had safe births, they had healthy babies, there was no issues. So when I found out I was pregnant with Josie, we knew that we wanted to try a home birth, and I found the best midwife ever. She actually was there for both of my home births, which is such a godsend. But when I interviewed her, I said, "Hey, do you know Ina May Gaskin?" And she goes, "Oh yes, I trained under her." And I was like, "The stars aligned. I'm supposed to be here. This is what I'm supposed to be doing." And we went forward with the whole home birth experience, which was so different, but it was so much more personal and it was so much more intimate and so much more just like wholesome and connected. And the only way I can really describe it is of like a higher power. She was just so calm and low lights and essential oils in the office. And it was so different than what I experienced before, where the sterile environment, bright lights, like, pushing you through like cattle. Um, but the way that I was just held so lovingly with her throughout the whole experience was beautiful. And to be fully in control of all of your options when you do have a home birth, like I didn't want to do the gestational diabetes test because I didn't think that all the ingredients in that stuff aligned with my plan for the home birth. And at that point, I had really started to heal myself from, eating horrible food for so many years and just really learning about true health and wellness, healing from the root and traditional eating and all of these things. Um, I had a beautiful pregnancy with Josie. With my oldest, I was eating Wendy's and I just had no clue, right? So I weighed 187 pounds when I had my first daughter, and I started off at like 110. So I gained a ton of weight with her. With Josie, I really was eating like a very nutrient dense diet, whole foods, fruits and veggies, things like that, like very conscious, totally different experience. I had a beautiful pregnancy. I was so active. I was doing yoga and handstands and water sports until I was like 38 weeks pregnant. I just felt so, so great. And then the day came where she wanted to come into the world. And, we were living out in the country at this time. So we were about 30 minutes from a hospital if anything were to happen. And I said to her, I was like, okay, what if something happens? Like, what's the plan? She's like, we'll call it way before anything gets serious. And that made me feel super supported. The other element here was my mom, because my mom is like so close to me. I'm so grateful for her. Um, and she was nervous. She was like, but honey, what if, because her and I's trauma from what happened to me when I was little is very connected. And so she's always kind of hyper aware of what could go wrong. you call it the black ice. I'm like, Mom, quit black icing me. I know it comes from a place of love, but I made her meet my midwife beforehand.
Mm.
And then she felt comfortable. And then I said, okay, when when the baby's arriving and you come to the house, I need you to leave your fears in the car.
Mm.
And she honored that. And she left her fears in the car. She came into my space with just love, compassion, and trust, which was really cool to see her show up in that way. I remember clear as day, she was making chicken noodle soup. She was feeding me pieces of celery and carrots as I was like going in and out of contractions. And Josie's birth was amazing. She was born, I started laboring at like, I don't know, we came home from my appointment. I started to really clean my car with a toothbrush, and my husband was like, I think birth is starting. And I was like, I don't know, I just really want a clean car. So I was like scrubbing all the little pieces of my car with like a toothbrush and out there cleaning and like super pregnant and like nesting. I was really getting prepared, my space prepared
I
for the
have
baby.
never, ever, ever, in all like my 5+ years of this podcast, ever heard about someone washing their car and cleaning their car with a toothbrush as a
Yes.
nesting thing. This is very interesting. I'm gonna I'm gonna keep this in the back of my mind.
I just like every little smudge mark in the car. I was like, oh, the baby, it has to be clean for the baby. And like I was vacuuming, and my husband just kind of let me do my thing. But I was very pregnant at this point. Like, I mean, birth happened a couple hours later. So I came in and I was like, okay, car's clean. And then I was like, I think I'm feeling something. And so I kept just going about my day. And then my mom showed up, and then I felt super safe. And that's when I could really kind of like drop into this birth space. So Josie was born in 4 hours. Her birth was phenomenal.
Mm.
Um, she was born at 10:47 p.m. And I remember falling asleep with her and then waking up in the morning in a bit of a panic, like, did I do something wrong? Why did we sleep? I didn't think that was normal. And my midwife came very early the next day, as they do, to, check in on you and everything. And I go, did I do everything okay? And she was like, yeah, some babies come out and they sleep right away.
You
And I
know
was
what?
like,
That's actually
wow,
normal. Like babies should have a long sleep after birth. And
really?
yes, and this is something that most miss because they birth in a hospital and you're so disturbed in the hospital and the babies get
Yes.
disturbed and mamas get disturbed. Really, when you've had a baby, both like the whole family should just sleep. And that
Yeah.
is really like this blessing of a sleep that can be like long, like 8 hours, like it can be
It
really long,
was.
even longer. And it can be so, and it is normal and it's
Yeah.
very primal to be able to do that then also,
Wow.
right?
Yeah. I remember thinking that, I was just like, I didn't read about that in any of the books or hear any of that in the podcast that I was listening to. So that was new to me. And it was so beautiful because when I woke up, I was rested. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I have this beautiful baby, and let's just like get to know her and love on her and look at her. And
But
um
Amanda, we've missed the birth story, so you have to dial
yeah.
back now. You just
Okay, I
skipped
was just I
ahead.
was just thinking of that. So I'm laboring all throughout, the few hours, and when my contractions started to get super close together, I said to my husband, I was like, okay, go fill up the birth tub. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna go fill up the birth tub. Well, we were missing the piece of the hose that connects to the shower head. And so he was kind of like, he was panicking, but he protected my space. My mom was like, it's okay, we're gonna find it, no big deal. We found the tube, we blew up the tub, or we filled up the tub because it was already blown up. And I get into the water, and I just remember feeling so held and so relaxed for what I was going through. And um, Josie was born probably about, I don't know, probably about an hour after I got into the birth tub. I remember at one point my midwife um, asking me to get out so she could check me. And I was like, I don't know about this. She was like, I just want to see how close the baby is because I think you're pretty close. And in that moment, I got out of the birth tub. I stood on the edge of the bed, and I remember putting my head back and just howling. My mom said, you howled like a wolf at the moon. And at that moment, she had transitioned down into the birth canal, and I didn't know that. And Kathy was like, "Okay, she's super close. She's right there." And I was like, "Can I get back into the tub?" And she's like, "Yes, you can get back into the tub." And so I got back into the tub. I had a few more super intense contractions, and Josie came out like this. Like the whole pregnancy, I could always feel fingers like like just really far down. And when she came out, she was born with her hands around her face like this. And when her head crowned, she was in her sac until she crowned. And so I think that made the birth even more gentle and like not super intense on my body. But when she crowned, her water sac broke. They rotate as they do to come out. And when she rotated, her head and her little hands are out, but she rotated and she opened her eyes and she looked up at my husband, who was right behind me. And he goes, whoa, she just looked straight into my soul and she's not even here yet. And so one more big push and she was born. And she was just so perfect. And so she was little. She was my second biggest baby. My first was my smallest. My middle was my second. And then my son was my biggest. But 6 pounds, what was she? 6 pounds, 14 ounces, 12 ounces, something like that. Perfect baby, born right into our arms with my mom and my sister and my midwife and her assistant. And obviously my husband, he was right there too. And it was just, and my daughter, Layla, was there as well. And it was just the coolest experience ever to just go through something so transformative, so intense, but not feel like you have to rush anything. It's like, okay, she's here. What do we do now? It's like, let's rest. Let's rest. And that's when, we all went to bed and my mom and my sister kind of helped take care of Layla and make sure she was settled. And yeah, we went to bed and then we woke up and we're like, wow, we have a brand new baby. Like, let's look at her. Let's look at her toes and her fingers and oh, look at her hair because it's just kind of it all happens so fast. Well, for me, it did anyways. It all seems like it happened so fast. And then when you wake up, you're like, wow, who are you? Let's get to meet you and get to know you. And so that was like my first introduction into home birth and it changed my life forever. And that in that moment, I understood the power that comes from being conscious for that transition from I mean, I was a mom before, but I really felt like the experience that I had with Josie that time around was just so profound because I wasn't medicated. I wasn't having, there wasn't 20 med students in my room staring at me. And they're like, do you care if, we have these med students in here when my first daughter was born? I was like, I don't care. I'm like crowning, I don't care what's going on. Just like I gotta have this baby. So to have that contrast of the experience was phenomenal. And when we decided to have another child, we knew that there would be no way we would have any other experience.
Yeah,
Um,
really night and day. So with
mhm.
your second now, when did you birth the placenta?
Okay, so that was, I'm trying to think back. It feels like so long ago sometimes. She's almost 11.
Mm.
Um, I birthed the placenta shortly after she was born. And that was also a very sacred and honored experience because, you have the baby and then you still have to deliver the placenta. And that was a foreign experience for me because I couldn't feel it the first time because I had an epidural with my first daughter. And they're like, okay, now you have to deliver the placenta. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, you got to just couple good contractions and it'll come out. And so the placenta came out and, we delayed the umbilical cord clamping until it was just floppy and white and there was no blood flow in it anymore. All the nutrients had gone to the baby. And little did I know, just the act of not clamping the cord right away was something so profound.
Yeah.
And it was just, I had heard a little bit about it and my midwife was really, she never pushed any of that. But then I really learned what that does, the delayed cord clamping and just kind of letting nature do its thing there, pushes all those stem cells to the baby. It's like, it's
Mhm.
truly miraculous how we're designed.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. It's a third of the baby's blood.
yeah,
Third is still in the placenta when the baby's born. So to cut it before it stops pulsating, you're
yeah,
actually depriving your baby. Imagine you losing a third of your blood. You'd feel it,
right.
wouldn't you? It's this just
100%.
natural, beautiful design that will help your baby transition. And if your baby takes a while to take the first breath, it's okay. It's getting the blood flow from the placenta. It's fine.
Yeah. I remember when she was born, she was quiet and I was like, "Is everything okay?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Yeah, she's just came out and she was just looking around." And it's so funny to think back on that now because it's very much so who she is now. Like they come with this divine personality and all these, traits and characteristics that you can really start to see like, from the moment they enter the world.
Yeah, and even the birth shows you
Mhm.
who that baby is too.
Yeah,
And, I think this is just such beautiful wisdom you're carrying through right now. For anyone listening, you were birthing in water as well. And usually water babies tend to be even more chilled, even
yeah.
more calm. And babies, whether they're born in water or land, to cry is not that important that people think. Yes, crying,
Mhm,
it helps open the lungs. But
mhm.
actually, especially as the placenta is pulsating, that cord is pulsating and the blood's going through, let that baby have its moment. There's no rush. There is really no rush. You can see as a midwife, as a trained person, and as a mama, like you can see that
Mhm.
that baby is doing well. Like you can see tone, you
Yes.
can see it has its eyes open, it's
Mhm,
alert, it has
mhm.
color. There's other ways of seeing that that baby is doing well
Yeah,
without having to cry. You don't have to make a
yeah,
baby cry.
exactly. And that's what my midwife said. She goes, "Some babies, like she's good. Look at her. She's like looking at you." And we nursed right away and we didn't have any issues with that. I remember nursing her and then falling asleep and then getting that long I'm pretty sure it was like 8 or 9 hours
Yeah.
that we slept. And then we woke up and at this time we had a home on the lake and the sun was rising. We woke up with this precious baby and my mom is there and my sister and my daughter and my husband. And it's just like so quiet and calm and no rushing and no bright lights and just us, my favorite people around me, just there for this sacred experience. It was, oh, I would do it 100 times over if I could, right?
Love that so much.
Oh,
Beautiful.
good.
Yeah, it's night and day, hospital and home birth, I think, for
Mhm.
everyone involved. And yeah, it's really, I see it like as the feminine paradigm and the masculine paradigm and the
Totally.
extremes of like where do you want to
It's like,
birth? Do you want to birth the feminine paradigm or the masculine paradigm with like all the bells and whistles and bright
yeah,
lights? Or do you want to be in the cozy nest of your own home, inviting the women that knows birth?
yes. And just to have that ultimate trust in my body and my space and my midwife and my birth team around me. I mean, my mom and my sister and my daughter, she was making me pictures like, "You got this, mommy." And
Mhm.
just it is, I mean, I know that this is how birth has been up until, not too long ago.
A couple
And
of generations, really, only.
yeah, and I really think people have been they're under a spell of like, this is how birth is. And in reality, that's not how birth is. And that's not how birth should be honored. Now, there are times when you do need that medical assistance, but to honor the body and the baby and that whole transformation from conception, birth, pregnancy, and birth, and just letting nature guide you is like, I want more women to experience that. And I think, by this beautiful work that you're doing with these podcasts, it's giving women like me that didn't know anything about it a
Mm.
chance to hear these stories and then trust a little bit more.
Yeah,
And I think I would say, just find a midwife that has got your back, that you trust with your baby in your life. And they're out there. They are so out there. So
that's
when
very important for sure. Very important to find the right person. And not all
Mhm.
midwives are the same. Not all home birth midwives
Nope.
are good. So it's definitely important to do your research and just interview different people until you find your
100%.
person. And I love how you said, how you asked her about what, emergency, you're 30 minutes away from the hospital, and how she said, which is so true, that a midwife picks things up way before they become an emergency. And
Yep.
emergencies are very rarely acute, like you need a cesarean in a minute, even though hospitals, doctors, and media and Hollywood makes you think that, it's
Yep.
actually not true. As a midwife, you can spot things. You pick up when something's out of the normal.
Hmm.
So when you pick your midwife, like tune into her and do you trust her? And she'll be able to safeguard you. Like that's
100%.
what she's there for.
100%. Yeah, she's there to protect you, your baby, and your space. And, you know, I remember asking her, I was like, what baby is this for you? Like, how many births have you done? And Josie was like 986 babies that she had delivered. And I was like, okay, you've done this enough. You have a lot of wisdom, a lot of experiences. And of course, I asked her, like, can you tell me about a time where you had to transfer a mother and what was going on? And so she walked me through different scenarios that she had had with women that she did have to transfer and for different reasons. You know, like cord around the neck and things like that, and like the baby's heart rate, you know, slowing down a little bit past the point of the midwife feeling comfortable. And she was like, but the baby was born fine. You know, there was nothing wrong. And I was there the whole time. And that's one thing about a midwife, I think that a lot of people don't realize is that when you do go, if you do, at the very rare case that you do have to have the baby outside of your home, your midwife is there. Your midwife is there for you and your husband and your baby the whole time. And she's an advocate for you. Um, and so I always, you know, of course, I had that little section in my birth plan. I was like, if I get transferred, Kathy's there the whole time. Kathy's like in charge of the baby. Kathy makes the decisions of the baby because she knew what we wanted. We didn't want the eye ointment. We didn't want the vitamin K shot or the Hep B, like all of these crazy invasive things. And, you know, thank you, Jesus. We never had to execute on that little section of the birth plan. But yeah,
Yeah.
everything was so beautiful for her birth.
And you know, these are really important things to bring up because some home birth midwives would not transfer, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
to have this discussion, like, will you, if
Hmm.
transferring is needed, like, will you come with us into hospital? Will you be our advocate? To have these conversations is so important to know you
It
pick the
is.
right one for you.
Yeah, for sure. And
But
she,
you knew
I
Kathy was your
did.
girl.
I did. The moment I was like, so how familiar are you with Ina Gaskin's work? She's like, oh, I trained under her. I was like, say no more, you're hired. We hired her right on the spot. Um, and then when, you know, we had Enzo, I knew that I wanted Kathy there again. And this was three years later. And at this point, she had already delivered like a couple hundred more babies because I went back in and I was like, hey, how many babies have you delivered now? Like, what number would this baby be? And she was like on 1,100 babies or something like that, 1,200 babies. And I was like, okay. And she was ending, she was towards the end of her career at this point. And she was supposed to go on this mission trip because she does a lot of home birth education in Haiti. So she was supposed to go on this big mission trip and go train these midwives in Haiti and, you know, just give her experience there. And I was like, but your trip aligns with my birth. Like, what are we going to do? And so, you know, there were other midwives there, but in my mind, I was just praying. I was like, please just let Kathy be there because I trusted her the most. And I would have been okay if, you know, Kristen, the other, like the midwife in that was going to take Kathy's position, had to be the main midwife. But I just knew in my heart that I wanted Kathy there. And again, the stars aligned and she was able to be there for his birth, but his birth was more intense, I will say. And I will explain why though. Um, I was, you know, I had two kids that I was managing and the household that I was trying to take care of. And you know, I was doing a little bit of work on social media at the time. And I just remember when I was like 41 and a half weeks, wait, was I? I was like 40 and a half weeks pregnant with Enzo. I was going to my daughter's volleyball game and I could like stick my finger in my ankle and pull it out. And there was like an indent. I was like, this baby's got to come. I am like on my feet too much. I am so just, I'm just ready. And so I went back to Kathy and I said, hey, Kathy, what can I do to kind of like speed this up a little, right? And she was like, well, you could drink the midwife brew. And I was like, okay, did some research on it. And I was like, okay, I think this is a good fit for us. And I don't recommend that. I will say I don't recommend that because I think, and my husband's still to this day, he's like, you told him to come before he was really ready, you know? And so his birth was more intense and it was more like powerful and like fast and
Yeah.
um but yeah, that was a different experience as well, but it was still beautiful. So when
Yeah, I just want to say for anyone listening
yeah.
who doesn't know, the midwife
hmm
brew is a lot of things, but it has castor oil in it. And
hmm
castor oil is, I think, something you can take if you need to go to the toilet, right? So it
Yes.
can give you diarrhea. And it really irritates the bowels. And what
Yes.
happens is because it irritates the bowels, it's just next to the womb. So it irritates the
hmm
womb. And if the womb is
hmm
ready-ish, in the end there, it can then start contractions. It can also, of course, make you go to the bathroom or make you have then
hmm
stronger, more powerful, kind of intensive contractions where it maybe sometimes
hmm
feels like it's just one on top of the other. It can also be that you get kind of false labor, which means that for some women, they can be in labor for a longer time and then it can just fizzle and
hmm
actually not continue. So
Yeah.
it's a wild card. If your cervix is really soft and ready and ripe and just, it just needs a little bit, maybe that can be a good thing for some. They think that that's a good thing.
hmm
I generally don't recommend it, just like
hmm I
you
wouldn't
just
recommend
said, no,
it.
I wouldn't either, because you don't know who you're going to be and if you're going to end up being in the
Yeah.
toilet a whole labor, or maybe you're going to have that false labor. So it's a
Yeah.
wild card to do, and I mean, it is better to just let nature take its
Totally.
course.
It 100% is always. And I think, we women, like, you're so excited to meet this baby and you just like, you kind of, for me at the end, I was like, okay, come on, like, time's up, buddy. We gotta go. Like, mom's ready to meet you. My body was just super sore. And, at the end, you get like really uncomfortable. I did anyways with that pregnancy, not with Josie, but with Enzo, I did. And, I think just different factors, more stress in my life at that moment, things like that. But yeah, just to your point, I started drinking that at like 10 a.m. I was in the bathroom all day, not a lovely experience. And then I remember thinking, well, shoot, I drank all that for nothing. And now my stomach hurts. Not a good way to kind of enter into the birth phase, just like already feeling a little depleted and not feeling super hot. So I remember going to bed. And at this point, we made sure that we know where all the attachments were to the hose, and the birth tub was just ready to go. Everything was a little bit more set up this time. And at midnight, I remember falling to sleep just fine. And then at midnight, I remember waking up like this. I was like, huh, what was that? It was like a strong feeling. And then I remember thinking, oh, well, maybe it was a Braxton Hicks. I'm just gonna try to go back to bed. And then of course I'm laying there and my one eye's open and I'm like, okay, I think this is the beginning of labor. And so I elbowed my husband. I was like, hey, I think I'm in labor. And he was like, huh, flew out of bed, got all the stuff ready, started to fill up the tub. And I was like, no, no, just like, I think it's just beginning. So just go back to bed. It'll be fine. I'm going to try to rest a little bit longer. And then I started to get like super intense contractions. And to your point, they were very intense, like almost, a not natural feeling, because I think of the castor oil. It was just so intense on my body. And so he came fast and furious. I started to really get into labor about like 3 a.m., I think. And again, having my experience with Josie where she was born at night and then we slept undisturbed, like didn't interrupt her birth at all, really just wanted to let things unfold. That was my first home birth. Didn't really, know any different. So I didn't intervene at all. And then with Enzo, I was like, okay, buddy, I like, I'm ready to meet you. I'm ready to have like birth and just get this phase of the transition over. And so when my contractions really started to pick up, I mean, they were like one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top, and I couldn't really get a break from them. And even when I was in the tub, so I was laboring a little bit, my midwife got the call, she headed over. She had just left another birth. So they were kind of, tired and exhausted when they got to our house. But My mom was cooking for everybody, so she had things, the night before prepared, and so everybody was like had nourishing meals to eat and things like that. But they started to get really, really intense, and then I got in the tub and I could not get comfortable for that birth. I don't know why. I tried like every position. I was like on my hands and knees. I had my leg up in the air, and when he was coming down, I think he was sitting on a nerve that made my right leg go numb. Like, when you have like the sleepy leg feeling. I was like, oh my gosh, my leg. That's all I could think about. It's like my leg. Oh, I can't feel it. It's driving me nuts. And so I'm like trying all these different positions, trying to get him to like get off the nerve and whatnot. And and then I just remember I was like, this is not going to go away until I push him out. And so I was working with my body with the contractions. And I think for him, I definitely pushed the hardest and the longest. Um, I remember looking back on videos I was sending you some pictures today and just watching like how intense it was. And um, he was a little bit bigger. He was 7'2", 7 pounds, 2 ounces. So my biggest baby, but still not big in comparison to others. But yeah, he was born after like I think 2 hours of pushing. I was so tired. I just remember thinking that was the most intense workout I've ever done in my whole life. But he was born, and his sac of water had popped way earlier in the labor process than Josie's. And I have read, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I had read that when the baby is born, or at least comes down the birth canal, and that sac is still intact, it is more of a cushion for mom and baby, and it is a little less intense. Is that true?
Well, both.
Yeah.
Some experience not the bag breaking as more intense because there's more kind of volume in there, I guess.
Oh, yeah, that
And
makes sense.
yeah, but when the waters break, it usually intensifies the labor and birth process and makes it
Hmm.
very much more intense. So you can have both experiences though. For some, it's like a relief when the water breaks, but it also then picks up maybe speed and intensity. But you can also
Totally.
feel like, whoa, there's just something huge inside of me that when the water
Hmm.
breaks, you go like, oh God, that's a relief because
Hmm.
I guess the full mass of whatever, that,
Yeah, that makes sense.
so yeah.
Yeah, and so for him, I definitely like I could tell when my water broke, and it definitely got way more intense. And yeah, like I said, I was pushing for what seemed like forever, and I was like, man, is this what's going on? It wasn't like this before. It was really gentle and intense, but not as intense as his birth. And looking back in hindsight, it had to be that castor oil just kind of irritating everything in there. But nonetheless, he was born into the arms of my midwife and me and daddy. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's here. And I was like really loud, and my midwife was like, shh, shh, shh. And I don't know why I was like so intense when he came into the world, but it's very, very funny because he is a very intense little guy and very loud. And just, I think all of that really does play into who they are.
Yeah.
And that, like, when I would recommend to the moms out there, stay as calm as you can, stay as quiet as you can, and my space was very protected, and the lights were low, and we had the salt lamp on and all of those things. But me myself, I was just like, oh my gosh, like very loud. And I don't know why it was like that. It's just the way that it was when he was born. But he's very loud now.
It's
So when
beautiful. They show you. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
whether or not the castor probably yes, but also that's his personality, intense,
Totally.
powerful, right? He taught you what
Totally.
he needed you to be as his mother, didn't he?
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, he did, and they still do to this day. But it's yeah, just thinking back, he's my most recent birth, but when he was born, he was just so alert and looked right up at us and was just way more like alert and intense, I guess is the way to describe him. Just very like powerful kid. And again, nursed right away, but we didn't sleep. That was the one thing with his birth. It's like it was 5:56 in the morning when he was born, and the sun had just rose, and it was like a whole new day. And I was like, how am I going to sleep? I did have like all the blackout curtains and things, but in my mind and in my like circadian rhythm, I was like, it's daytime. I'm awake. Like, let's, look at this baby. Let's rest. But like, I really wanted to get to know him. And I always joke, I'm like, from that day on, I never slept until he was like 5.
Probably true.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just having a boy is like so different than girls. And, not knowing how to tuck the little pecker down into the nappy when my midwife, I was like, he's peeing on himself. Like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, well, you have to like tuck it down. And I was like, that makes sense. Didn't know that. Thanks for telling me. Because all his onesies were like wet above his diaper.
Oh,
And I was like, he's literally peeing up his shirt. How is he doing that? He's like, well, she said, well, it's pointing that way. Point it down. And I was like, oh, okay. All these things you don't know until you have, a son, and it's so different than girls. But I just, when I reflect back on these births and the comparison to the hospital and the experience, it's just like the one thing that I would tell a brand new mama is just trust. Trust in your body, trust in your baby, trust in your birth team, and don't do anything that is going to make things happen in an unnecessary way or an unnatural way. And speaking from experience myself, the whole castor oil situation. Um, Reflecting back, I wouldn't do that again if I had an opportunity. I would just honor the time that it takes for them to come. And I think in the end, you are anxious to meet the baby and you do really want to, for me, I was like tapped out of being pregnant, and I feel a little guilty saying that, to be honest, but it is just the experience that I had. And I would honor it more. I would just say, okay, this is just, he's taking his time and he'll come. They come when they're ready. They really, really do. And you don't have to do anything but just nurture yourself, protect your space, take care of yourself, nap while you can, um, eat super good food. I mean, that's so important. I'm such an advocate for nutrition. I think it's an overlooked thing for a lot of people, but when you're nourishing a growing life and you're doing all the things that your body needs it needs extra support, it needs extra nourishment, it needs people to just love on you a little bit more. And so to put those people around you in your space, for sure.
yeah. Thank you so much. And I think you're so not alone in mamas feeling like they're done and like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm ready now. And so especially in our modern world and everything is there's so many demands on us and it's
Yes.
fast paced and it's just getting worse when it comes to that. It's just so intense right now. And
Hmm.
so maybe with this piece of wisdom that you just shared, really for anyone listening who's feeling this in this moment, maybe she's 40, 41 weeks and she's
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, come on.
Hmm.
Like turn it towards yourself and go like, what do you need in this moment to really nurture and nourish yourself? Can you actually just instead of doing that, like wanting to get things going, how can you instead do everything for yourself in this moment to endure and maybe even enjoy the last few days?
Oh my gosh, seriously. And, I think that it also comes with age too. Like wisdom comes along with age. And, I'm 7 years older than I was when I had him. And I know now that if it were ever to be something we experience again, that I would honor that sacredness. I would honor the time that it takes for the baby to come. And I would do, to your point, just rest and relax. And I think for me and maybe other listeners out there, it's hard to ask for help. Like this has been something for me that I have really had to get uncomfortable with asking for help. And in that moment when I was, 30 when he was born, um, asking for help was like not something I was comfortable with. And so I was all doing all the things. I was still, running the kids here and there. And I remember being like so pregnant, taking my middle daughter, Josie, to the local swimming pool because she was all cabin fever, and this was in northern Michigan in the dead of winter, and there's like really nothing to do, and I didn't want to like put on a jacket because I was so pregnant. So I was like, okay, we'll go to the pool. And I just remember looking back and thinking, man, I should have just been laying at home, like reading a book, drinking some tea, just honoring that phase of life. But I had a really hard time asking for help. And so if that's you and you have a tough time asking for help, just know in these moments of the last, all of your pregnancy, but especially the last few weeks leading up to birth, like you have to ask for help. It's okay. And you need to respect and honor yourself in that way because you can't do it all. And you need to really focus on what's up ahead. And that is bringing this new human to earth and giving yourself the best chance to have the birth of your dreams, if you will, to, be energized enough, be satiated enough to to be ready for that because it's intense, it's so beautiful and it's so intense. But yeah, just ask for help. Don't be afraid. And if your people around you immediately can't help you, then reach out to your friends and your neighbors and your family, because I know everybody's family has different demands. Husbands work, the paternal care industry here in America is just, it's literal garbage. I remember going to Europe and learning about how the dads get like a year off, paid paternity leave. Same with the mamas. And I was like, that is honoring birth right there. Because to have this new baby, and when you have multiple children at home, and then you get 2 weeks with dad, and then, say you have other small kids, and then no like mother or mother-in-law around you. And that wasn't my experience because my mom was always super supportive. But I remember thinking when she left, like, okay, he's 4 weeks old, like, how am I going to do all this by myself? And just to look at the way the United States is compared to different parts of the world, it's like we have lost such touch with reality. And through the work that you're doing with this podcast, it's letting people know, like, this is like forced and rushed, and we're asking women to like bounce back 6 weeks after they have a baby. And I will tell you right now, I did not go back to, I mean, I don't think your body is never the same after, right? So I wasn't in my pre-pregnancy genes until my kids were like 2. And I'm a smaller woman. And so to just like that is like bouncing back for some, maybe, but for most, it's not a thing. And that's okay.
And
And
it's a
so
very
many women feel
toxic
bad.
culture to have that instead of seeing, I
Yeah.
mean, it just comes from the disconnected society we live in. Instead of honoring this transition, you're becoming a mother, you're going from maiden to mother. And then, even as a
Yes.
mother already, it's a transition, it's a new phase, it's a new embodiment. Embody her. Don't try to embody
Yes.
the maiden, embody you now. Who are
Yes.
you now? Find you now.
Mhm.
And on what you just shared about, asking for help, so many
Ugh.
women, I mean, myself included, I think it's
Mhm.
hard. It's hard to ask for help. I think if you can really understand that you, especially when you're pregnant, you and your baby are one.
Yes.
So when you ask for help, you're actually helping your baby.
Oh, I love that.
Right. And so if a woman, if you are listening and you go like, I am one who's struggling with that, if you can rewire your mind and go like, actually, when you do that, you're not asking for yourself, you're asking for your baby. Because when you're nurtured and supported, you are then going to be a better mother in pregnancy, in birth, in postpartum. So it's for
Yes.
your baby as much as for
Yes.
you. And if it's hard for you at all to see it as for you, just say it's for your baby.
Mhm.
It's for your baby you're asking.
Yeah. And another thing I think that is very overlooked in today's culture, especially here in the United States, is like the postpartum care. I mean, my sister is due with her first baby soon, and I've already got like, I'm like, you ready for all the food I'm going to feed you when that baby's born? And I bought this book called The First 40 Days. And in Asian cultures, the mama doesn't leave the birthing space for at least a month.
Mm.
and she's nourished and taken care of, and all the other duties of the house, like the laundry and the other kids and the grocery shopping, she doesn't think. Like, to be so held in that way where you don't have to think or to worry or to feel that kind of stress on you has got to be unbelievable. And I'm lucky that I was able to experience like a little bit of that. I did have help, but I know there's so many people that have other experiences. And I just want to talk about that for a second, because the nourishment,
Mm.
again, I am such an advocate for nourishment and good nutrition, but the nourishment that that mama receives after her baby is born is quite literally the most loving thing you could do for her.
Yes.
Feed her warm, healing foods.
Mhm.
Be there to wrap her feet and keep them warm. Be there to tuck her in and give her sips of water. Like, do not let her struggle. So
Yeah.
many women in this country here in America, they have lost that. And I think that is why we see postpartum depression. I think that's why we see all of these, mamas kind of like losing it a little bit, because they aren't fed well, and the demand of nursing on the body when your baby is born is calorically intense, and
Yeah.
you need to be so mindful. So that's a really great book, The First 40 Days, and it's got a ton of good recipes in it that are like warm, and they're based in like Chinese medicine, where um you're really just replenishing the chi of the body. And I'm not very versed in it, but I have read that book several times, and
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
a
like, wow.
beautiful, beautiful resource. And really, what that culture says, and I truly believe that, is that the way you are nourished or not in the first 40 days after birth sets you up for the next 40 years of your life.
So
So
true.
it's very crucial. It talks about how crucial it is, and it's really true. And it's not just Asian cultures, it's really around the world that you
Yes.
have this. It's indigenous,
Mhm.
really. It's human.
Yep.
It's human
Yep.
knowledge that has been lost in the
Mhm.
West, which so much has
Yes.
been lost in the West, just
Yes. So
traditional
sad.
knowledge.
Mhm.
Um, and so really take that to heart. The way that you are being treated and cared for by yourself and others the first 40 days really sets you up for the rest of your life, really, so as a mother, and later as a maga, as a crone, as an elder in your
Mhm.
society. So don't take it lightly. And this is one thing, I work with women from all over the world. I both, teach birth workers, and
Love
but
it.
also I assist women both in my community and online who wants to have a natural empowering birth, but also nourishing postpartum. And this
Yes.
is where,
So overlooked.
everyone comes to me for the natural birth. Everyone comes to me for, space holding in birth. And I have to tell them, hey, no, let's look all, it's as important, if not more
Yes.
important, your postpartum. And I will have,
100%.
women booking in and go like, actually, I don't care about the postpartum. I just want this part of the package. I'm like, no,
Mhm.
no, no, I do the full package. Like we do
Mhm.
the full package. We look at both how to prepare for birth, but also prepare for the postpartum. And I will be there in your postpartum.
Yes.
I'm not going to abandon
Yes.
you at birth, right? But
Yes.
that's the view of most women. 99% do not want the postpartum care,
I
Amanda.
know, I know. And it is so, I can't express to a new mother who is listening to this how how important that is. I mean, to your point, like, I'm just going to repeat what you said. It is if not more important to have that tender loving care and that nourishment postpartum, because that's where you heal. Like, by the time those 40 days are up, you're feeling a little bit better. And if you don't have that nourishment after, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you're not feeling good. You're not sleeping good. You're falling apart at the seams. And as a new mama, like, everybody deserves to feel that support afterwards. And, I'm just super grateful that this message is getting out, because it's funny that you said so many women don't even look at that. But it is just as important. That phase postpartum is just as important as the whole pregnancy. It's just as important as the labor. And we need to do something to kind of bring this back to the conversation, bring this back to the table, because if we can prepare meals in the fridge, meals in the freezer, months ahead of time, then when maybe you don't have somebody that's like around you 24/7 that can do that, but you have the food, the nourishment that's easy to just warm up and have somebody bring to you in a mug or on a tray. So you're not having to go far, maybe you go to the bathroom or maybe you get up out of your bed and like peek out the door or something, but just be in that newborn bubble, live in it, breathe in it, nourish in it, and honor it most importantly.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amanda, for your beautiful birth stories
Of
and wisdom.
course,
It's
of
been a
course.
pleasure having you.
I'm just so grateful that, we've connected and I've been given a chance to share this because it is so important. And you women out there, you are worthy. You are worthy and you deserve this. And remember to ask for help.
Yes.
Ah,
Beautiful. Thanks, Amanda.
of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as the Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.